Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the GRADEx Show on Earth, powered by GRADEx Media. I am James Cybulski, and that right there, that is the guru. That is the collectibles guru, Fabio Del Rio, the CEO of GRADEXmedia.com. And hey, just a quick reminder, everybody, make sure you're liking, you're subscribing to our YouTube channel, and make sure you're following along on X and Instagram for more content that covers all things in the collectibles world. Because as you know, if you're a collector, things are on fire right now. So also another friendly reminder, and Fab, I know you know this, but for everyone else, just a reminder, if you haven't signed up just yet, check out gradexmedia.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter on all the latest trends, news in the industry that goes into your inbox twice a month. And best of all, it's not going to cost you a dime. You don't have to pull anything out of your little collectible slush fund, that you're setting aside. No, it's free. And you know who likes free? Everybody likes free. What's going on, Fab? Summer is here. We're in the dog days of summer, but I'd say it's been anything but. We had a wonderful World Cup run that went, 6 weeks and just kind of wrapped up. Baseball's All-Star game just passed us here. We've had the draft. So this is prospecting season, isn't it?
We've been spoiled the last month, seems like. Holy cow. Every day we had tons of events. We had all kinds of sports going. And it's funny, we had that one day, what was it, after the All-Star game, where there was actually almost no sports on. And that was weird. We didn't have fantasy to check. It was just one day out of this, amazing avalanche of entertainment that was just quiet. And maybe we needed that because it's time to get into it now. Baseball is heating up. We're getting close to the trade deadline. It's stuff starting to happen.
Well, it's fascinating to me to see the trends that are starting to pop up as a result, right? ESPN has been very strategic doing the ESPY Awards, right, on that dark day on the calendar right after the MLB All-Star break. It's okay. ESPN's kind of created that sort of viewing schedule for them. Now you've got how Fanatics Fan Fest has now become such an event, and how things have now been strategic in terms of the marketing and the building and the scheduling all around there. Obviously coincided with the World Cup final happening that weekend in New York. You also had, it's funny, again, everything comes back to wrestling with me, but like WWE locks in with stuff. You bring in all the celebrities, but people have time, right? You also had, there were baseball players that are around for that as well that seem to pop in right before the schedule starts ramping up again. It is fascinating to see how the industry and how the sports industry continues to evolve at a time where we think, July is kind of a downtime, but, Fanatics Fest, you've got the Nationals coming up. Like, everything is happening, my friend.
This is like the prime time of collectibles, and everything you mentioned all ties into cards and collectibles. You mentioned Fanatics Fest, which is basically like the Comic-Con for sports. You got athlete appearances, you got talks on stage, you got cards, you got announcements, all kinds of crazy stuff that went on right in downtown New York. And, the weekend of the World Cup final, just amazing. And this is I think the second or third year for Fanatics Fest. And they're really starting to figure it out, and they kind of got their groove. It's a big event. And of course, as we lead into the National, which is in Chicago this year, that is one of the peaks in the collecting calendar in terms of buying and selling and secondary market. People have been holding back the last few weeks to maybe save funds for the National. And then, boom, the National hits, and the sales start ramping up again, whether it's at the show, after the show. These next few weeks, the market really, really picks up traditionally.
Yeah, this is what a time. Like, there's no slowing down. And then NFL training camps get going, and that's all. It's wow. Okay, let's talk about prospecting here for a second, because I know you love it. You're a baseball guy, proud member of the Brock alumni. And so let's talk about prospecting here right now. What's hot? What stands out? Obviously, the draft was recently. Rock Chill Out, your boy going first overall. Midsummer Classic comes and goes. Jacob Mizorowski, again, showing what he can do, and the numbers he's putting up. What stands out? Let's talk a little bit about baseball prospecting. What are you seeing? What are the trends, and where's the money going right now? Obviously, people still love Shohei, and he continues to set magical marks here with card sales. But what else is happening?
Yeah, baseball is kind of everywhere right now. At every level, whether it's like you said, prospects coming into the league from the draft, like the Rock Chalowskis who went number 1 to Chicago. The rookies and young stars like Jacob Mizorowski, like it's amazing what he's doing. My God. And there's such a tie-in with Mizorowski is that you've probably seen on social media. He actually has a Pokemon card built into his glove. So he's one of us, man. He's a collector. He loves his Pokemon cards.
He's a ski.
And he throws 105 miles an hour. And he's a ski. And he throws 105 miles an hour, which is unbelievable. And here I'm wearing my Pitching Ninja shirt, and Pitching Ninja is a popular account on X on Twitter, and Pitching Ninja's in love with Jacob Mizorowski. Like the stuff he does mechanically at his size, his command stuff, he's something special. And we've talked about it, how pitchers, it takes a lot to get love in the hobby. A lot of his best cards are, like I said, selling at Skeens and above level, which is super cool. But yeah, baseball you can tell it's just been sitting in the background while the World Cup was going on, heating up on all angles, prospect side, your typical superstars, your young stars, and now it's baseball time.
From a collectible standpoint, look, baseball is not what it was 100 years ago. Baseball is not what it was, I would say, 30 years ago. And yet, despite the increasing popularity, like when I talk to most young people that I know, when I encounter, they're not necessarily baseball fans. No, there's a huge baseball community where I play or where I live, and a lot of kids play baseball, and softball as well is very popular. But when I talk to younger kids that are sports fans, obviously they like hockey, loving soccer now, right? The growth and the popularity of soccer internationally is huge. Football, the NFL, and the NBA, right? Like baseball, not a lot of people, want to talk unless the Jays are cooking in the playoffs again, and then there's an excitement. But for the most part, with younger people, and yet baseball still seems to be the de facto barometer or the top of the power rankings when it comes to the collectibles industry, or when it comes specifically to sports cards. Why is that still? I guess some people think that, some industries or some sports are grossly undervalued compared to what baseball, but why is that trend still continuing after all these years?
Well, part of it is the legacy. Like it has the longest heritage by far.
Yes.
When you talked about card shops in the 80s and 90s, you called it a baseball card shop because that was the prominent sport. It wasn't until the early 90s that the other sports even really, was really involved. Like, of course, in Canada, we had hockey. That was number one, but it was hockey and baseball. And in the States, it was baseball, baseball, baseball. And the other sports were kind of off to the side. But it does have the most tradition, no question, in sport-wise and in the hobby. But one of the other big things is I like to use the expression, baseball is a lot like church. A lot of people go, but not a lot of people know what's going on. So it's one of those sports where it takes a lot to learn baseball. They say every time you watch a game, you see something you've never seen before. There's a lot of that. And there's a big learning curve with baseball. Like I'm amazed at the questions my wife asked me about baseball. We've known each other 20 years, and she'll say the most basic thing about baseball that she didn't know. There's just so much to the sport. And if you're not in it all the way, it is a different vibe than football, especially hockey, soccer. And so it is a different sport, but when you're in, you're in. Like baseball, they say baseball's hard and it loves you hard, and you have to love it back hard. And, it just keeps coming back. There is a mystery to it. And again, prospecting is a big part of it because truly you never know who's going to make it. We were talking on text the other day about what we think Cybulski is going to turn into. And what I know for sure is that kid hasn't failed yet. He's not a guy who had to scrap and claw and really earn his spot. He's been on Team USA since he was a young guy. He's just succeeded. And so what's going to happen when he's facing a wild 102-mile-an-hour fastball in the minor leagues? What if he goes 0 for 30? How is he going to react? And that's the biggest difference, I think, with baseball is when your head's not in it, you're at 0 to your team. Like pitcher that can't throw strikes. Like, my God, you become unplayable. A point guard that loses his shot can still distribute the ball, can still go back and play defense and be effective. But baseball, if you're not on, it's all on display, and it is probably the most mental game along with golf. And when it comes to collecting, again, it has the most heritage, it has the longest running brands, it has the most expensive cards overall. So yeah, it's one of those things. It's got a little bit of magic on it. Basketball was the number one sport for several years, especially as we were into the pandemic and getting out of the pandemic. But we've talked about before, guys like Shohei Ohtani have now taken baseball back as the number one collectible sport.
Okay, so a guy like Cybulski's out there right now. There's cards out there already. He's been signing deals with UCLA cards that are out there, and obviously independent cards.
Finally.
Yeah, and so that's happening. Obviously, in the world of NIL, I can only imagine this is going to continue to expand mightily, across the landscape as it's been popping up already throughout college sports for the last couple of years. You got Brendan Lawson in the pipeline, who could potentially be the highest ever drafted Canadian in MLB history. Adam Lowen currently has that, being drafted 4th overall back in 2002. But I'm curious in terms of, if you're prospecting, do you dive in now? Do you start gobbling up the Cybulski? Are these the rookie cards now? Are these the cards to get? Or should you be waiting for the actual MLB debut cards? So, what's the answer for somebody who's thinking of prospecting at this stage, thinking, I gotta get me some Cybulski. I gotta get me some Brendan Lawson at some point when those cards pop up.
Yes, and yes. And here's the biggest thing. Baseball prospecting is so unique compared to the other sports because there's so many athletes that come into the pipeline, that come into baseball, professional baseball every year. You have, 30 some rounds of the draft. You have international free agents. But here's the truly unique part about baseball prospecting is a lot of these guys, they ramp up, they start to perform in the minor leagues, they start to show up on MLB Pipeline's top 100 prospects, they start getting up into the top 20, top 10, and that's when the cards go bananas. And it's almost like the lead up to their major league debut is the peak of their collecting lives. It's such a bizarre thing. You see such a run-off with a lot of these guys, and it's like the debut is when, that's when it all comes coming back to earth, because there's so much money built in that people expect greatness, they expect championships, and it's been such a regular pattern that so many of these prospects just build up, and it's like a build up to the debut. It's almost like the performance doesn't matter. And there are no other sports like that. Because baseball, first of all, you don't know if a first rounder is even going to make the major leagues. Like, there's no guarantee of that. With the NFL, all those first rounders are getting a shot. They are part of the NFLPA as soon as they sign. You got to understand the patterns of baseball prospecting and baseball collecting, because there's so many people that will buy into a guy when they make his debut, and that's his absolute peak. And then he just plays okay, and his stuff drops 30%, 40%. And people are surprised. Like, what? I got in on him early. Baseball prospectors, whether they're fans for fantasy or fans for card collecting, they go deep, and they go long. Like they're watching guys that are, well, they're starting at 16 years old, right? International free agents. And again, some of those guys will get cards right away, and you sit on them and see what happens. Some of them turn in something great. Some guys take a long time.
So what's the better play right now? Rock or Miz, if you're spending money?
It's interesting because, first of all, Miz is expensive now. He's,
Yeah.
Paul Skeen's expensive.
But two-time All-Star already, right?
Yeah.
He's showing that he's a player. Yeah, he's showing that he is a player at the major league level.
I think Jacob Mizorowski is more of a special player than what a Rock Chalowski could turn into. I think he'll be kind of an all-star shortstop, a very solid short. He has a great glove. He's great defensively, which is really good, and his hitting is excellent as well. But in the end, he's only played college so far, and it's a big step from college to pro, especially from AA, AAA to the big leagues. So Rock Chalowski right now, he didn't come in with the crazy hype like a Paul Skeen. He does have some UCLA licensed items with a company called On It, and that's a fairly new college licensed card company. And their emphasis is on deep checklists. So they produce cards of a lot of different players from a lot of different sports in different schools. And they actually beat Topps to doing a Chalowski card. They've done several of his cards. They came out a few weeks ago. They won't have the massive upside like what his Bowman Chrome autographs will be like. So, yeah, it's a tough call. To me, I think Miz, he's special, a really special pitcher, but he's a pitcher. So we're not quite sure on what the future holds.
Yeah. When's Tommy John, right? That's just seems to be inevitable. Well, like Thanos, right? That's okay. So there you go. A little look at prospecting right now in Major League Baseball and in the baseball hobby world as we speak. So let's move to soccer here now, or football for those rest of the world that aren't in North America. But we put a bow on the World Cup. It kind of went out with a bit of a whimper. I think the way the game played out in the final, where Spain just absolutely demolished Argentina. I mean, just a one-sided affair. But let's talk about this in a big picture sort of thing. When you look at the impact of the sport and just how big it is globally, I don't know if the collectibles industry had, and I think this is one of those ones that I think if you were a collector, dealing into soccer cards, maybe that market was undervalued for years, and now it seems to be starts to catch up now. What's the trend are you seeing in soccer? Obviously, a lot of names became household names in North America. Erling Haaland, Kylian Mbappe, obviously Messi is Messi, but Lamine Yamal, countless other stars that really put their names, really became a statement. And where's the trend going? Because it looked like we were starting to see some big numbers. You touched on it last episode, talking about a seven-figure sale for a Pele card. So what are we seeing now with the trend? Does this World Cup in North America change the perception in the collectibles world for footy?
It does, for real. Like you said, lead up into the World Cup and the first few weeks, we saw some extra sales, but it continued through. Like I was watching, Erling Haaland cards, and, all of them basically, tripled from what they were a year ago. And, he became not just a soccer household name, but like a sports household name. It was so charming, man. Everybody loved him. His personality, his game is unbelievable. And he's got a neat assortment of cards, whether it's cards with him in Norway, with some of his earliest clubs, kind of his rookie cards, lots of interesting options with Manchester City, autographs, memorabilia, all that. So I read he picked up something like 20 million followers over the course of the World Cup. And that's that is the guy who's now a superstar just globally in sport. And so, I think he's probably gonna be one of the guys that benefits the most from this World Cup. And um, I can't say enough about the guy. He's just a really special player. With Spain, it's an interesting one because, you have the young guy Lamal, he's the next guy, right? He's supposed to be the next guy in line, and his cards are nuts already, and people are hoping that the focus of what his career is on playing, because he is a social media darling, he's an advertising darling, he's ready for the camera, and as if he focuses on his game, I think he'll be good, but we don't want him to lose track of what's going on. So yeah, soccer's here to stay. There's no question. There's a lot of money that's gone back and forth. The thing I'm most curious about is what happens over these next couple of months, where it becomes, the quiet soccer season in general. There won't be games, be domestic leagues for a while. We have the MLS going, but I think North American soccer is really benefited from everything. Obviously, the way the World Cup went, it wasn't exactly as smooth as you would have hoped on a PR side of things, but the events themselves, the performances of the players, the crowds, the TV audience, all of it was win, 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 win.
Well, that's right. Yeah, look at the Final Four. I mean, you had France, England, Spain, Argentina, right? You have the greatest player of this generation, in the mix, in the finals. He comes up short, but he's still there, right? England, Spain, France, you got the heavyweights that are in the mix. You can argue some of the officiating, you can argue about some of the calls, and there's a lot to nitpick about. But that being said, I think you have to look that this was a home run of a tournament overall in the grand scheme of things, expanding the field to what they did with 48 teams, and now starting to think about expanding it even more. They're kicking around, and look, I mean, when you started getting to the knockout stages in sort of the first round of 32, you had drama, right? And round of 16 was exciting. The quarterfinals, the final 8. I mean, I think it checked a lot of boxes. You're right. I think for veteran players that are starting to age out in Europe, that obviously with the experience, maybe this is an eye-opening experience. It's hard not to think that Erling Haaland will probably wind up in North America, maybe 10 years from now, maybe not anytime soon, but maybe 10 years from now, he's finishing up somewhere, maybe in a Minnesota, right? You got a good Scandinavian background there, a lot of Vikings, that are battling along. But that's to me, I think there's growth there. There's an opportunity. It was interesting to see, as somebody who went prospecting with the Canadian players, going back 4 or 5 years ago, leading up into the first World Cup qualification, and maybe buying high at the time, but at the same time, like 4 years later, those cards have all decreased exponentially. I look at the Alphonso Davies. I know Alphonso just had a big sale. Had a big sale for one of his cards, but for the most part, Alphonso Davies cards are down. Jonathan David's cards, Tajon Buchanan, like these cards, they seem to be going in the opposite direction, I think, in terms of, despite 2 World Cup appearances now for Canada, those cards seem to be going in a different direction.
Right. And, we've talked about it in past episodes about how soccer collecting is so volatile. And, we just mentioned how there's so many new baseball players that come into the pro baseball ecosystem. Well, it's nothing compared to soccer, right? Like, how many significant leagues do you have around the world? And they have their academy teams and their pipeline. And, we see it all the time in collecting. A 16, 17-year-old wonder kid, like, comes out of nowhere. He's going to be the next big thing. And then he's on within 2 years. Like, been on 5, 6 different clubs afterwards. So that's part of the deal with soccer collecting, and yeah, and that's why the top guys are so revered. You know, they stay up there the length of their career, and yeah, you know, you gotta have a good stomach. It's fun to prospect, right? Especially fun to prospect when people from the country. You know, for us to collect these Canadian guys, it's great. You know, it's typically we get to see how good these guys are before they go to Europe or before they get picked up by a big club. And that's fine. You know, that's an enjoyable piece of like, hey, I saw this guy early. I have a few cards in my collection, and that's great. Like, value of it is whatever it is. You know, are you gonna buy them for 10 and flip for 20? I mean, doesn't matter. You know, if you love the guy, if you're starting to love Canadian soccer, it's just nice stuff to have in your collection. It's, you know, it's when you start getting into the big dollars, when you're buying, you know, patch autographs numbered out of 5 of this 18-year-old, and it's costing you 10 grand. Well, you better have a really good idea of what you're getting into, because it can be nasty. And so, but you know, there are plenty of the collectors that like to play in those waters, and it's definitely not for everybody. And like we've mentioned, prospecting, the chances are the guys won't make it where you think they're going. You know, there is, like we mentioned in our baseball story a few weeks back, you know, 9% of the top 10 prospects by Baseball America had a Hall of Fame level career. And Hall of Fame level doesn't necessarily mean they're incredibly collectible. You know, one of these guys that was a top 10 Baseball America prospect who had a good career, made someone like Carlos Beltran, right? Really nice player.
Yep.
But not that collectible, right? Like you can pick up his rookie card probably for $100 in top condition. Also, even to become an outstanding player, to be also collectible is so tough. And yeah, hey, you gotta know what you're getting into. That's half of what collecting is all about, and it is exciting, right? You want to get in early when you see a celebration, when you see someone special. You want to get in on it, but it's good to remember that most guys aren't going to get there.
Yeah, and hit that money in terms of what that drawing power, what that finance is going to ultimately come in at long term. We got a story we're working on right now on the GRADExmedia.com website, Fab, and talking about photography, and the impact of what a great visual does to make a card iconic. You know, and that's like what is the old picture tells 1,000 words, or a picture says 1,000 words, right, or whatever. I'm clearly getting it wrong somehow, but it's every picture does tell a story, and you know, a great photographer, a great picture. When you think of iconic images in sports, not even necessarily on rookie cards, but when I think of, you know, one of the most iconic images for me in sports, Muhammad Ali standing over Sonny Liston, you know, in that rematch, right, and scream at him like, "Get up," you know, and you know, there's
a great card about it. Yeah, and there's a great card with that image. And it still lives on today. That's that 1991 KO boxing. I think you told us the story about it a while back. And one of the great shots in all of sports.
Right?
That's a perfect example.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you think of Wayne, you know, Bobby Orr, you know, flying in midair, scoring the overtime winner to win the Stanley Cup. These are those iconic sort of images that you see over the years that stand out, right? And so let's talk about the impact of photography here and how it impacts the collectibles world.
Yeah, it's something that's evolving more and more. It's becoming more of an important part of collecting, which I think is really cool. And remember, in our very first episode, we talked about the Sidney Crosby golden goal photo, right? That's the golden goal autograph from Upper Deck Tim Hortons. No one could use that photo because no one had the license with the IOC, with the Olympic Committee.
Yeah.
And that's part of what made that card so special, is the fact that you could use that photo on an Olympic licensed product. We've seen plenty of Sidney Crosby autographs numbered out of 10, but that is so special because of the photo. And so that's what we go into with the story. Is this is becoming more of a thing in collectibles, in cards, of course, especially. Another recent example is the OG Anunoby, right? The tip to win, what was it, game 4? Unbelievable play, but there was a shot captured. Oh, shoot, I forget. I think the guy's name is Joe Murphy or Josh Murphy, something like that. He's the photographer, and he has that great angle, kind of like from the press box, a little up above, where you can actually just see him, just touch the ball enough. And that card, Topps did it as a Topps Now. And I forget the exact quantity. I think we talked about it. It might have been 105,000 copies of that card.
Oh, yeah. Immediately. Yeah, for sure.
Immediately. And it's only because of the photography that card was so popular. The moment, all of it. And we live in an era where we can do these digitally printed cards, get stuff out quickly. The whole, made to order stuff with Now and Panini Instant. It's a great time for that sort of thing. And so anyway, so we touch on the story. We talk about the photographers, some famous photographers that have great images on cards. Classic stuff from the 90s.
There's Bo with no shirt on, right? With the bat,
right?
But now about the bow breaker, right? I mean that. And not that that's a hard card to find by any, or an expensive card, but that's a classic card where he's breaking the bat over his name, right? Just like, man, that is
that. Exactly. And that's the point. Like, both these cards we're talking about are not hard to find. They are still fairly difficult to find in top shape, which again, in this era, grid plays a big part in that if you want to, own something special. But it's a really nice part of collecting that I've seen evolved. And a lot of that, I wonder if it comes from the entertainment side of things with trading cards and collectibles, because you hear so many times, like in Pokemon, people just fall in love with a particular character or the design of a card or the look of a card just because, and it goes crazy. Again, we'll keep in our Canadian theme, the Jose Bautista batflip. He's on 2016 Topps Chrome. And I have a friend of mine, he's doing the full color rainbow. So he's doing the base card all the way to the red parallel out of 5. And I don't think he's going to be able to get the 1 of 1, but what a fun project, right?
Yeah.
Did you see, all those cards in the binder and you flip and it's all different colors? I think that also plays into it these days, having nice photography and then some scarcity with different parallel, especially when you can color match. And what color match is when the parallel, the border of the card on a parallel matches the jersey of the player or the colors of the team. And those go for a kind of absurd premium, but just because of the way they look. Even less rare parallels become more valuable sometimes because they are a color match. And especially for big fans of those players, it kind of plays into that aesthetic. So we've been picking at this story honestly for, again, about 4 or 5 months, just putting together ideas, kind of getting people's opinions on meaningful images on cards, which ones are still popular. There's lots of modern cards. This story, I think, is important to collectors, and again, giving photographers their props, but understanding that you like the look of a card. That's meaningful. Like I said, we're trying to get some opinions from people, and I'm sure we'll get some great suggestions once the story comes out, and we'll try to make it nice and visual so people can, if they're not familiar with certain cards, say, "Oh, what a photo!" Because if you haven't seen it, James, the Bautista batflip, it's horizontal. First of all, if you haven't seen the card itself, it's a horizontal card, and it's wide. So you see the crowd in the background, and it's that perfect flip that we've all seen on 8x10s. So different parallel versions of that just look spectacular.
My kids have never heard me scream so loud at any point than that moment with the Bautista batflip. Getting ready to go into work that night, do the highlight show, getting dinner or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden I'm watching that, with the time difference here on the West Coast, and man, that was epic.
I'll tell you, I was there. I was at the game.
You were at the game.
I was at the game. So here's the crazy part. And as fans that were at the game, there's a reason why the crowd went bananas. So the inning before, you had the play where Martin kind of throws the ball back to the pitcher.
Yeah.
It hits the batter on the knob. The ball goes live. The run scores.
Yeah.
And the umpire calls time, right? So we're all sitting here like, hey, he called time. And they didn't explain anything to the crowd. So that night, I watched Harold Reynolds. He actually did a really good job explaining the rule that even though the umpire called time, the ball is still live. He actually explained it really well on TV, but in the stadium, they didn't explain it. So we're still fuming after the play, and the inning continues. We're like, everyone's thinking, umpires, you are not getting out of this building alive. Like, there was built up anger, and you saw the beer cans come down and all of that. And the sense of relief when that Bautista hit that home run, like, I think I had second level seats or something. And when he hit that ball, I got on the shoulders of the person in front of me to just watch it go. And we went nuts, man. It was just this angry relief. And I stayed up till 3 a.m. watching the highlights, watching the Jays in 30.
Yeah.
Damn, they did a good job on TV explaining it. And they did not do a good job in the building. We were fuming the whole time, but man, what an experience.
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes the downside of the viewing experience within a stadium, right? Because they don't necessarily want to give you everything that you're getting. And you don't want to you don't want to make an official look bad, so you don't want to show all the replays sometimes and go back and like, hey, what was that? And make somebody look bad. So I get that. And that's where sometimes the viewing experience at home can sometimes supersede. But until you have a moment that, I think as a Jays fan at that point, it had been 20 plus years since they had been in the playoffs. And then to have a moment like that you're just like, okay, the emotions, the tension in that series, in that game, and for it to erupt. So there's another classic image. Going back to the junk pack era, Magic versus Michael, that upper deck card, 1991. For me, that was an iconic. The first time Michael Jordan as Magic Johnson are on this card together, kind of battling, right? That classic card in Julie Inman. Yeah. And again, it's not a card that's overly hard to find, but in the moment at the time, matched up Magic and Michael, like that initially was seen as like, that is a valuable card at one time. And so
have a look at the hologram cards from that set. So the award winner hologram cards. Okay. And not very rare. I think you got several per box. But the challenge is try to find a nice copy, because the things, again, surfaces all scratched up, but the hologram maps on them is really, really well done. Like early in those years, we saw some holograms that were just kind of, a little bit of movement and just kind of on holofoil. But if you look at those award winner holograms from the first years of Upper Deck basketball, awesome. And a true treasure hunt in decent shape. And we're talking even as an 8, a 9, 10s, forget about it. They cannot be found. But again, it's that same idea. I have a feeling those cards may pop down the road in a serious way, because, the way they look in hand, the challenge of finding a decent copy. I have a hunch there could be something, because, Michael Jordan inserts from the 90s are pure gold these days. Typically, it's the mid to late 90s of Jordan stuff that really goes nuts. But maybe to look at the early 90s and those holograms, again, you can find raw copies probably for $10-15, but look it over closely because
one that's not scratched up.
Not in the best shape.
Interesting. Yeah. Lastly, on this episode, we touched on the ESPY Awards at the outset of this podcast episode here, Fab. But the fact that the ESPYs actually did an award for best sports card, this is huge. It really kind of speaks to the growth of the industry right now, where sometimes people think it's just a fad and, with COVID, it'll take a dip, and now it's on fire again. And, talking to one vintage collector who really deals in high-end cards, he's talked about, just how there's a lot of people with very deep pockets and the finance guys and, that Kevin O'Leary's that are now starting to kind of, show off. And, there's some ego to it. But there's also an element of investment too. But the best sports card, and go figure, the first award goes to a hockey guy, Macklin Celebrini, the Cup Rookie Shield Patch, 1 of 1. What a year for Macklin Celebrini.
I mean, what can you say? How many times have we talked about him on the show? Out of our 10 episodes, I'm sure we talked about him at least 5 times. But I'll say one thing that was super cool is a lot of the voting on Twitter, on X, through ESPN and then the ESPY account. And I'll say Upper Deck was the first to get on it. And it goes to show how passionate hockey card collectors are. So you had some monstrous cards in there. You had the Celebrini NHL Shield Patch Auto. You had the Gold Emblem Josh Allen Auto Patch. Like you had some of the biggest cards of the year and some that have sold for over $1 million. Wow. And it's Macklin Celebrini that came through. And I think it was a source of pride for hockey card collectors saying, no. We have the best card. We're going to vote the heck out of this thing. And quite frankly, who's bigger than Macklin Celebrini in hockey cards? And is there anyone that doesn't absolutely adore that guy? As a person, as a player, all of it. He's got it all, this kid.
Yeah, he checks all the boxes, and it seemed like the perfect call for Electronic Arts, EA Sports, to do Macklin Celebrini as the cover athlete for NHL 27 this year. So that's huge for Celebrini. And just, obviously, he's so popular. The kids love him. He relates to, every kid you talk to. They all love Macklin Celebrini and, with what he's done. And it's fascinating because, you got Connor Bedard, who just re-upped for $15 million a season now for the next 5 years, and good for Connor Bedard. But I don't think Connor Bedard has even come close to matching the hype that he had and the fanfare coming in, where Macklin Celebrini had some fanfare, but not the expectations and the hype that Connor Bedard had. And I would say Celebrini has not only exceeded it, he has taken all of that. He's the guy. He's the guy. He's the needle mover. He's the guy selling the jerseys. He's the one that the kids want to be like. There's an energy about him. There he is on the Olympic team, right? Like there he is, in the conversation for being athlete of the year, and just remarkable with what he has done to be in his second year already in the conversation as an MVP. Already, in the conversation. Hey, we're talking in an era of Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby, and the guy that has all the buzz right now is Macklin Celebrini.
That's amazing. And at the beginning you said there, he didn't come in with quite the buzz. I wonder because he was a college guy. We didn't see those crazy CHL numbers that Bedard had. And I wonder, he wasn't one of those clubs that we knew at 15, 16 years old. Kind of like Bedard, kind of like Gavin McKenna, but so cool to see. And, San Jose Sharks, that's one of those popular teams, popular jerseys. He's the man right now.
Okay. They're giving us the go-home cue here to wind things down on this week's edition. Thanks so much to everyone. Again, just a quick reminder, remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and make sure you're following along on Instagram, on X, for more content that covers all things in the collectibles world. And don't forget, again, check out gradexmedia.com. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter. It's free, twice a month, into your inbox. Quick and easy. You don't have to go anywhere chasing it. It goes right to you with all the latest news and information that's happening. He's Fabio Del Rio. I'm James Cybulski. We're cooking here in the summer, and we will be back soon enough with another edition of the GRADEx Show on Earth, powered by GRADEx Media. See ya.